everybody, welcome back to another Quickster Games video, and today I'm going to be teaching you about variables. So this is going to be the next part of this series on how to learn C++. So variables are probably one of the most important things in programming. In general, every programming language has variables. So why should we use them? Well, let's first talk about what variables do. Variables store data. The variable can be named into anything of the user's choice, and there's many different types of variables. The one we'll be working with today is called an int, or an int stands for integer. If you have taken basic algebra, then you should know what an integer is. It's a whole number with no decimals. That is what we'll be storing. How to create a variable. In order to create a variable, all we need to do first is specify the type, which is int in this case. Then we name the variable, which can be anything we choose. After that, we're done. So let's do this. Okay, so the way we can create a variable is by typing the name of the type of the variable, which you already know. It's int, and you know if you got it right if it is a blue word. And then what we need to do is type in the name of the variable. We will just call it our cool int. Okay, so now that we have this, but there is no value to this integer, it's just a variable. We can't really do anything with it. So let's store a number. So to do that, all we say is equals, and let's just make it equal to 10. And we can print, and we don't need to do quotation marks, because quotation marks are only necessary if we're specifying a string, like an actual human text and not code. So without quotation marks, we say our cool int. So this will print the variable. So if we put quotation marks around this, then it will literally print our cool int. But if we do it without quotation marks, it will print 10, because that's what this variable equals. So if we save this and we hit the run button, we can see 10. So this can be useful in so many ways that I can't even say how many, but let's say we have some thing that we're being reused. Let's make this age. Okay, and we say, I'm just gonna make a story. I'll be back. Okay, so I wrote out this little thing. It says, I'm 20 years old. That means I've lived for 20 years, or 2 decades. 2 decades is a very long time. 2 decades is 7,300 days. So we have a lot of integers in this, and let's convert these all to variables. So if you have no idea how to put a variable in the middle of the text, let's say I want to store 20. You can see I have int age equals 20. So what if I want to put age in the middle of this? So the reason you might want to do this is, let's say I'm not happy with 20 years old. What if I want to change that age? Well, then I have to go, it's very tedious. I have to change this to let's say I want to change it to 30. So I have to change this to 30, change this to 30, change this to 3, change this to 3, change this to 3, and then do the math for this. So that's very kind of complicated. So what we can do is instead, you can see if I run this actually, let's just see what the story says. Alright, you can see it works. Okay, so to put this in here, what we can do is separate this sentence into 2 different parts, so it's printing 2 different parts. So we put n quotation mark here, and then another quotation mark, so now they're kind of separated, and then we do those arrows, right? So it should print the same thing, but now it's separated. So what we can do is get rid of this 20 and put another one of those angle brackets, and now in here we can type in age. So now we can hit F5 to debug. And we can see I am 20 years old, except I messed up the spacing here. So we can just put space. And now that should work perfectly. So everywhere that it says 20, we can just do that exact same thing. Okay. And now you run that and it should say age. Yep, that means I've lived for 20 years. But we're printing the variable now. We're getting this value and then printing it. So we can make another integer called decades lived and equals 2. And actually, you can do math with variables. So let's say we want this all to be automated. So as you all know, a decade is 10 years. So if you live 20 years, that means that you lived 2 decades. So what we can do is do the math and have the computer do the math for us. So what we can do to calculate the decades lived, we can do 20 divided by 10. Okay? That's how we get the decades lived. So we can do that math in C++. It will allow us. Now for the days, we can say int days lived equals, and we can do 20 times 365, which is the amount of days in a year. So now that we have all that math, we should have the exact same values here. We can get rid of all this. And if you have 2 lines like this where it's pretty much the same, but you have to edit both these variables, instead of doing it one at a time, you can do Control Alt and click. And now we have 2 lines that we can edit. So you can see we can edit both of the lines at the exact same time. So we can just put end quotation mark, or decades lived. So we should have the exact same output now, but it's all in variables. And actually I did make a mistake here. What if we want to change our age variable? The decades lived is still going to say the same thing because we're doing 20 divided by 10 no matter what. So if the age is changed, then this won't change. The decades lived will still be 20 or 2. So what we can do is just pass in our age variable into here so that it does the math based on the age variable. So we should get the exact same thing. I'm 20 years old. That means I've lived for 20 years or 2 decades. 2 decades is a very long time. 2 decades is 7,300 days. So let's say we change this to 30. I am 30 years old. That means I've lived for 30 years or 3 decades. 3 decades is a very long time. 3 decades is 10,950 days. So that's where variables is useful. If you just want to change one variable and have your entire program change based on that variable, that is very helpful, because when you have this, the code tends to be very, very nice and just very reusable, and I just don't know how to explain it. It's very nice. So that's where variables come in. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!